Today's reading comes from the book of Exodus, chapter 12, verse 1 to 14. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, "This month is to be for you the first month of your year. Tell the whole community of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one for each household. If any household is too small for a whole lamb, they must share one with their nearest neighbor, having taken into account the number of people there are. You are to determine the amount of lamb needed in accordance with what each person will eat. The animals you choose must be year-old males without defect, and you may take them from a sheep or the goat. Take care of them until the 14th day of the month, when all the members of the community of Israel must slaughter them at twilight. Then they are to take some of the blood and put it on the sides and tops of the door frames of the houses where they eat the lamb. The same night they are to eat the meat roasted over the fire, along with bitter herbs and bread made without yeast. Do not eat meat raw or boiled in water, but roast it over a fire, with the head, legs, and internal organs. Do not leave any of it till morning. If some is left till morning, you must burn it. This is how you are to eat, with your cloak tucked into your belt, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. Eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. On the same night I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn of both people and animals, and I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt. This is a day you are to commemorate for generations to come, and you will celebrate it as a festival to the Lord, a lasting ordinance." Thank you.
Good morning. This morning I want to welcome you as I preach my final sermon at St Saviour's Church. And I'm going to revisit a theme that I preached on the first ever time I preached at St Saviour's, that of celebration. Then we've been looking at spiritual disciplines, and I was asked to preach on the discipline of celebration. And imagine my surprise when I look at the Bible readings for today, and the first one I come across is that of the institution of the Passover celebration. So we're going to celebrate. I'm going to celebrate some things that have happened over my 3.5 years at St Saviour's. For those of you that have never been in the building, I hope it gives you a flavour of what an amazing church it is and what a blessing it's been to be there in the last 3.5 years. But more than that, I really want you to understand why we need to look back and celebrate what God has done in our lives over those years, every year. And as I talk and as I share my experience, I would love for you to think about the things that you want to celebrate that God has done in your life. But let's start by looking at the Bible and looking at this celebration that God instituted. Imagine the scene. The Israelites were in slavery. They wanted to be free. So many times God had sent plagues and encouraged the Pharaoh that if he let them go, things would be well. But still the Pharaoh held on to the people and said, "No, you are not going." And this time, God wasn't messing around. He was really going to make sure the people were set free. He was going to deliver them from their slavery. And this time, he got the people involved. And he told Moses, this is what you've got to tell the people, and this is what they've got to do. And while you're doing it, can you remember that you're going to do this every year from now on, just to remember what you did and what happened as a result. So, the people had to prepare. They had to prepare a fattened lamb. They had to prepare food. And then they had to come to the table dressed in their travelling clothes, eating bread that hadn't been raised to signify it had been done really quickly. And then they were going to daub the blood of that lamb on their doorpost to signify these were Israelites living here. Keep them safe. And then they were going to go to bed. And the next morning, imagine them waking up and hearing the screams and the cries around them as the Egyptians found out that their firstborn children had been killed. And yet the Israelites' children were totally safe. And of course, the Pharaoh is now so angry that he wants the Israelites gone. And he tells them to get out. And this is why they had to be in their travelling clothes. They had to get out now. They had to move quickly. And this was the start of a journey for them, which we now know took 40 years. This was the start of their new life. It became the start of their year. So Happy New Year. This celebration was important to them. They had to remember this as they were in exile. As they wandered around in the desert for 40 years, the once a year remembrance of what God has done would signify remembrance for the future, would help them to realise that this was part of the journey and let them see the bigger picture. And then we fast forward thousands of years to a man named Jesus with his disciples entering Jerusalem for the Passover celebration. They go to a room, they eat a meal. And as he sits there and as he eats that meal, he breaks the bread and says to them, when you do this, remember me. Because Jesus was another lamb, the lamb that was going to set all of us free. The Passover, the original Passover, symbolises, remembers the setting free of the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. Jesus, as he set the meal that's now become Holy Communion or Eucharist or the Lord's Supper or whatever you like to call it, is us remembering that he has set us free. And so we do it in remembrance of that. We celebrate, and communion should be a celebration of all that God's done for us. But do we remember that that's what it's supposed to be? And do we make the most of it? And even for some of us, is it the most appropriate way of celebrating? For me, I'm more a cake and tea type of person. And I was privileged a few weeks ago to have some friends round for cake and tea. So my celebration, and excuse the empty plates, is an afternoon tea. I'm going to remember every time now I have one of these, that celebration. The celebration that sees me moving on for a new adventure. We all need something to celebrate. And in my first preach, I talked about birthday celebrations and how I remembered the ones that I'd had as a very small child, but how I hadn't managed to have any since. Birthdays had become meaningless to me. But this time of year, this September time of year, has much more meaning for me because it's the start of a new school year. And I loved going to school. I loved the new learning. I like going into new classes. I especially loved the new books that we got. It was a marker of growing older and moving on. And so for me, this is a new year in a way that all the other New Year's celebrations, whether it's the beginning of Advent, the 1st of January, or even the new financial year, have meaning for me. This is the time of year when I celebrate everything that's gone on before. So, if you'll let me, I just want to run through a few things that I'm celebrating since I came to St Saviour's. There's a lot of them, So I'm going to use my list. So first of all, I remember and I celebrate that God brought me out of a place where I was really stuck. And when I think of how he did this, my mind goes back to my garden. Because it was while I was gardening that God spoke to me. I, years ago, was a Salvation Army officer. I ran a Salvation Army Corps. And I had a really hard time there and in the years that followed. And I believed that I was a useless leader. In fact, I believed I wasn't even a leader at all. And God showed me through people and through situations that actually that wasn't the case. And he showed me over a period of years, and it was 10 years, and I was driving in my car and he said, you've got to get over this. You have got to move on. But still I was stuck. I was stuck in the past and of what happened. But I was angry that I couldn't move forward into the future. And one Sunday when I was too angry to go to church because I would have upset the other 20 people that were there, I was gardening. And as I was there, God said to me, you need to try something else. And so the next Sunday I ended up at St Saviour's. I'd heard that they were casting a new vision, that they were introducing a new building plan. And I was curious. And as I was there, God allowed me to see something new. And I went back the next week and the next week. And I thought I was on a sabbatical. But in reality, after about week 4, God spoke to me and said, no, this is where you need to be now. It's time to move. I'd been stuck and I was moving. God took me out of my situation, which in a way was quite comfortable. It's where I believed I belonged. And he put me somewhere very different. I've been at St Saviour's before. I hadn't really enjoyed the experience. I felt like a spare wheel. I felt odd. But God was putting me back there. In the interim, I'd met lots of people from St Saviour's. I now knew more people than I ever did when I worshipped there. So that was different. And it was undeniable this time that that is where God wanted me. I celebrate that he brought me out of stuckness into something new. And after a few months, I knew that the only way to really fit in was to get really, really involved. And just being on the welcoming team was not going to do it. And so I gave my day a week that I had off at work to come and work for St Saviour's. My challenge was to get everybody serving, and they said, oh, that'll take you a few months. And I laughed the laugh of somebody that's been in church leadership long enough to know that that is a dream of every church leader. And I got involved with all the teams and the people, and I was made part of the extended staff team. And I began to learn what it was like to work in a large church with a big staff team and lots of extended staff and volunteers. I began to learn what it was like when you brought new people into leadership. I was enlivened by the fact I was working with people. Instead of being in a very small church where I'd done everything, here I was somebody that was just helping other people do things. And people were asking me questions. They seemed to think I knew the answer. My confidence was being grown. But even then, I still struggled. I still struggled to believe in myself and not to beat myself up about when things went wrong. And there was one event at St Saviour's with our staff team where, it went so wrong. And I lost confidence in everything. But in the weeks before, I'd been praying and God was showing me that I didn't have to beat myself up about these things. I just needed to use them as learning opportunities. And so I was able to pick myself up, to know that I was still okay. God still loved me and I was still okay. I made mistakes, but hey, it's learning. At the first sermon I preached on celebration. And I explained about this birthday party that I'd never had because I was afraid that no one would come to my birthday party. I got a wonderful message from a member of our congregation that said, I don't like parties, but if you throw one, I'm coming. And this really touched me, that this person that had been through so much, cared so much about me and what I was going through, that she would put herself out for me. St Saviour's has been a place of celebration for me, because when I had my afternoon tea party a few weeks ago, the problem was who not to invite, because there were so many people I could have invited. And with only 6 people allowed in a garden at a time, that wasn't going to happen. But the people that came, and we had the most amazing conversations. And that's another thing that I'm celebrating from being at St Saviour's, that there are people who come and have amazing conversations. So often I've been in churches where people do everything at the surface level, and they don't talk about things that really matter to them. And here I had women and my husband who would talk about the things, whether it was bereavement, whether it was bereavement of a partner, of a job, people that were struggling, but were struggling for answers, who would look at the Bible for them, would tell stories of what God had done for them. And as we look forward to the time when the church can take forward the Kintsugi Hope Project, a time when people are literally mended by God, we celebrate that. So here I come with nobody to support me, and I go away now with so many people to support me. I've been delivered from the things that I used to beat myself up about. I've been taken away from the stuckness. But what else has God done? Well, those of you that have been at St Saviour's for a couple of years will remember Joy at Kempton. An amazingly huge event that we did in 6 months, with so many churches working together and so much provision on a zero budget, because God sent the money, God sent the people and the connections. This was a time that I love because so many people were working together, and we were doing things that we never thought possible. Our social transformation pastor at the time, Claire, had a dream to feed 5,000 people on surplus food, and we managed to do it. It was amazing, and we saw 50 people make commitments. We saw churches working together. We saw people coming from around the globe to be part of that. We showed that people do want to know about faith. It was an amazing time. And in that, I learned about myself. And one of the things I really want to celebrate is one of the friends is the critical friends. The people who would say, Julie, you are getting stressed. Or Julie, and just look at me. And I would know at that point my voice was getting louder and I was getting more irate. And just because I wanted people to do things, I thank those people who came alongside and would just say, Julie, and give me that reminder that I just needed to calm down a bit. God gave me those people. He gave me the memories so that in the future I will remember it. God also released us as we came to Sunbury from the need to travel to church 14 miles away each week. We've saved the planet because we haven't got as much carbon input. We're able to walk, we're able to be part of the community. We have become experts at using surplus food. Not just the surplus food that comes in for our food bank, but the surplus food that when we went to New Wine and our next door neighbours in the tents were cooking too much, we had that as leftovers for our dinner. And New Wine is another thing to celebrate, another opportunity that we've been able to take part in since being at St Saviour's. An opportunity to camp with others. My camping is getting even better, and every time I will put up my tent, I remember the people that we've camped with and the conversations that we've had and the messages that we've listened to, the fellowship that we've gained. What else is on my list? So I've had new opportunities, I've made friends, I've reduced my carbon footprint. I've had opportunities to use the links I've had. People tell me that I'm great at connecting things together, and I seem to be doing quite well this morning. But one of the things was when our previous church leader, Ro, said, somebody's asked me to make a video for Africa, for this village, for this event, where I don't know what to do. How do I do it? And I gave her some pointers, and then I said, but I know somebody that comes from Africa who will have an opinion and can help you. And when I linked them together, the lady was really encouraged to have been asked to do that. But more than that, we found out that she came from the very village where this video was going to be shown. So she could talk right into that situation. God knows what we need and puts people in place to do it. So I've been able to connect people together. I've been able to educate a few people about the different denominations and how that works and the different structures. I've picked up the guitar again after many years of not playing and got to play in the worship band. And I've been able to refine my thinking on worship and what that means. I've been able to celebrate. I've learnt new things about people and church and how they work. My everyday job was learning about people. But people in church, wow, they're different. I've been able to share my story more than anything with others. And I've been able to make a difference. And I really want to thank you for the feedback. So from the lady that emailed me the first time saying, I'm coming to your party, to the lady that says to me, are the pies coming this week? And she's remembering a sermon I preached on giving, when we had a visual of pies, my pie chart, which was not going to intimidate anybody. It showed me that visual, memorable things are important. St Saviour's is a place where I've learned much more to live in the present rather than in the future and what might be. To trust God one day at a time. And so today, as I leave St Saviour's with my list of many, many more things that I could have talked to you about, I celebrate what the last 3.5 years have been. And it's right that on this last day I talk about celebration. And it's also today my wedding anniversary and my son's 16th birthday. So every time we have that event, the 7th of September, I will remember St Saviour's and all that you have done and all that God has done through you. So I want to thank you for all that you've been to us as a family for the last 3.5 years, for all that you've been to me, for all that you've encouraged me to be. But I want it to encourage you as well to think about what God has done for you. What do you need to celebrate and how do you need to do it? As we go into a time of reflection, as we sing our last song, just take a few moments to write down what God has done for you in the last few years and think about how you're going to celebrate it.